Time for another Out and About with Jamie Grout podcast. And this is a shortcast where we kind of sum up what we talked about in our podcast. And with me is Frank Liebl, who's the director of the Newton Development Corporation. What is the purpose of the Newton Development Corporation, Frank?
Well, it's to work with the existing companies here and help them with workforce and if they want to expand. And then the other thing is we try to recruit new businesses to the community. That's in short what we do is try to grow the community through industrial development, and we work some with retail also.
So you come from a background in sales. What is your pitch to these companies that are possibly interested in coming to Newton? What do you say to them?
Well, Newton's a good location. You know, we are close to Highway Interstate 80, and we're close to University of Iowa. We're close to Iowa State University. So if they're looking for those four-year institutions, we're close to the downtown Des Moines, state capital, less than 30 minutes from downtown. So just a great location, and that's a good part of what we pitch is our location.
You had some big news in our podcast talking about the railroads and how that's all connected to Newton and the networks that the railroad has.
Yeah, that's really very important because the railroads are what they call a short line railroad, Iowa Interstate Railroad, based out of Cedar Rapids, and they're making an investment right now in the community to try to, well, the one thing they're doing right now is right across from TPI, and I think I mentioned that podcast about making a renewable energy distribution center. So anytime we can keep big blades and maybe towers off the highway and ship by rail, that's much better.
That's fantastic. What are some of the first things that companies ask about before they consider coming to Newton?
Yeah. Well, first of all, they want to know what the, if there's available land, if they're not looking for land, what kind of available buildings we have. Then, of course, it's workforce and that type of thing. And actually a lot of how close you are to the interstate, because as you know, driving on the interstate, all that truck traffic, and that's how a lot of product gets from coast to coast.
So, these podcasts and the video, they go all over the world. I don't know who's watching or who's listening at any one time, but what are some of the selling points of coming to Newton, Iowa, 50208?
Yeah. Well, what I think is we're right in the middle of the USA, basically. And, Interstate 80, which is a highway, goes east-west from New York all the way out to California, runs right through Newton. Interstate 35, which goes from Canada all the way to Mexico, is just 20 minutes away. So that's just a very good part of geography of being that close to to what you're trying to do as far as reaching both coasts.
What do you see for the future of Newton?
Well, I think that with the investment that we have from some of our economic development departments, I think it's just a bright future because, we'll continue to grow. We've had the largest population right now in the 2020 census. We're never going to be a huge community, but we're big enough. We have a lot of the amenities, but we still have that small town charm.
We talked on the podcast about how when Maytag closed, a lot of people were down in the dumps and whatnot, but Newton's been able to pull itself up by its bootstraps, so to speak. Yeah. And you were talking about the occupancy of Plant 2.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's a big facility, as you well know. It's 1.8 million square feet, and right now, with the efforts of Phoenix investors out of Milwaukee who bought that plant back in 2015, it's nearly 100% occupied. And at one time, there's like 12 new companies out there, and some only employed 4 or 5 people, but others employed a couple hundred and that type of thing. So it was just great to see somebody with a vision come in and do something with that plant. So many times when industries leave a community, those buildings sit there and nothing happens to them, but they deteriorate. And so we're very fortunate to have people like Phoenix investors involved in the community.
Let's backtrack a little bit. Tell me how NDC got started.
Well, back in 1961, a group of local people said, hey, you know what? We need some industrial spots. So they invested some money and went ahead and bought about 65 acres of land and then worked with the city to develop it, put the infrastructure in. And that's how you ended up having some buildings out there. And it's kind of amazing to drive out there. At one time, that was just a brownfield or greenfield site. Now it's full of buildings and it's generating well over $400,000 in tax revenue for the city.
You also talked on the podcast a little bit about homes being built in Newton and how that has progressed over the years. Maybe you can expound on that, Frank.
Yeah, it really has. The Newton Housing Development Corporation has done a fine job because they are the lead in trying to get new homes built. But, as close as we are to the metro and the way the communities are growing around the metro, it's awful hard to get developers come into Newton and to build new homes. And I think we're fortunate because we've had a number of different builders come to town. We haven't had that one builder that's come in and built 20 or 30 homes, which is probably good, because you drive out to the newest development in Northeast Newton called Arbor Estates and look at all the different designs out there. You go to some of these bedroom communities around the Des Moines area, and you drive into this development, and every house looks the same.
Right. A lot of urban sprawl, what they
true.
say.
That's true.
Before we wrap up, how can people find out more information about NDC?
Well, go to our website, www.newtondevelopmentcorporation.com. We've got listings of buildings are available. We've got the workforce information, all kinds of information on that site.
Fantastic. Thanks for talking with us.
Thank you, Jamie.
Frank Liebl, our interview guest on Out and About with Jamie Grout. You can check this out on all the podcast channels, the longer version of the podcast at Spotify, Amazon, iHeart, Apple Podcasts, and of course, what you're watching right now on outandaboutvithjamiegrout.com. Thanks for joining us.